Namaskar. Welcome to Gazali, the program on news, views, and analysis on current affairs. And it's our pleasure to welcome a very special guest today, Mr. Tilak Devasher, who retired as the Special Secretary in the Cabinet Secretariat. I would like to call him as a scholar officer in terms of his deep insights and deep knowledge on matters relating to India's security and more particularly Pakistan, of which he has been a very, very keen observer. He has also been a student of history and therefore going deep into the history of the country, the processes it has been through, and also some of the larger issues confronting India's security today. Are the themes that we thought would be interesting for us to take up with him. So welcome, sir, to Gazali. I would like to begin with your two books, Pakistan Courting the Abyss and also At the Helm. So your first input on the basic motivations on writing two books on Pakistan.
I had an interest in Pakistan from an early age, thanks to stories my father told us about two Air Force officers in the Royal Indian Air Force who were his flight commanders in the Second World War, flying Hurricanes and Spitfires over Burma. And at the time of partition, these two officers went into Pakistan and became army chiefs over there. 65 war and 71 war, I was growing up, heightened my interest. In college and university, I studied the history of the freedom struggle and the partition of India, and I was hooked on to Pakistan. So I've always had this feeling in me that, we need to know more about this country. Why is it a troubled state? Why is it a troublesome state? And are its problems rooted in its origin? Are they current, or are they rooted in its very origin, in its very genesis? And why does it languish at the bottom of every international comparison in the danger of being declared a terrorist state? So all these things, during my service career, I had the opportunity to study Pakistan professionally. So after retirement, I decided that, I must put all this down on paper and whatever was in my mind. So I studied more, I read more, and then I decided to write. So far, two books I've written on Pakistan. One talks about the critical issues plaguing the country, and one on Pakistan leadership. And maybe there'll be a third and a fourth also.
I see. Indeed. So from the way you have analyzed Pakistan in the two books, your first book has been more into the general history of Pakistan, the kind of processes it went through, and the important factors that impinge on Pakistan of today. And your very, very catchy weep analysis, on which I'll come to later. And the second book on the men at the helm. So it's quite obvious that you are referring to the systemic process in Pakistan, and you are also looking at the leadership part. Can I take you to another important dimension, which at times one feels is getting a bit missed out in our contemporary discourse on Pakistan, and that is the civil society in Pakistan. There was a time when India's official position was that while we deal with security matters in the same language as we should, there is also a need to develop the peace constituency in Pakistan. So people-to-people contact are very important. Unfortunately, when you look at the scenario in the last 5-6 years, there has been less emphasis on that. Now, since you have been a man of actual policy and operations, do you think that the civil society in Pakistan and India reaching out to this particular group stands a chance in the present scenario?
You see, my personal take is that it's undoubtedly an excellent idea to reach out to the people and present your point of view and build a peace constituency. But the civil society in Pakistan is extremely weak. They are not able to influence policy to the extent that civil society in India is stronger and can certainly, impact on policy. In Pakistan, this is not so at all. So you have very strong media, for example, right? Media in Pakistan is extremely strong, but there are red lines. The media will not talk about the army, will not talk about India, right? So, likewise, other middle class organizations or NGO is extremely weak and undeveloped yet. So, reaching out to them and trying to create a peace constituency will not pay dividends because they always come under the influence of the establishment and are not able to deliver at all. So, in a sense, you are barking up the wrong tree if you think that by developing a peace constituency you will be able to impact or improve your relationship with Pakistan. It's not going to happen.
But then your books also talk about Pakistani fascination for things which are Indian, and India's fascination for tanhaiyas and the Pakistani plays. And of course, the moment you talk about these, you also talk about a generation that has shared common values. Now we are seeing a time when perhaps the leadership which would have memories of partition has gradually got eroded. We are now coming to a generation which would look at Indo-Pak relations purely in terms of crisis that the two countries have seen. So do you think that given the generational shift that has taken place in the two countries, prospects of a peace constituency become all the more difficult, or in the creation of Pakistan itself, there is a kind of a systemic fear about India which will pervade the generations?
You know, it's a complex answer. One hand, because of a generational change, the people who are in leadership positions now or will be over the next decade or so don't carry the baggage of partition, which I think is a positive thing, because so long as your mind is clouded with memories of partition, very bitter memories, especially in Punjab and Delhi, you know, that always acts as a deterrent because you know what has happened. So a generation, a younger generation which does not have the memories, has only read about it in books, probably has a better sort of chance or better shot at this. Yet, what is taught in Pakistani schools, you know, which builds the mindset of a young child, especially after Zia's time in the 70s, the kind of indoctrination against India, against Hindus, against, you know, making them almost into caricatures, is so strong, especially in Punjab, that it is poison. It's a mindset is totally poison. The pre-70s curriculum was far more, I would even say liberal. You know, they talked about India. Now you will find that history begins for Pakistan only in the invasion of Sindh, Muhammad bin Qasim's invasion. They don't talk about anything of the past. And the Hindu is painted in a very negative sort of light. The Sikh is painted in a very negative light. So with this kind of indoctrination happening, for the younger generation who may not be burdened with memories of partition, yet they are burdened with so much of negativity and hostility towards India that it's very difficult for people to think straight. So unless and until that curriculum changes, you know, change in the Pakistani mindset is not going to happen.
Another important factor that comes across in your book is I would say, a kind of a very core political economy analysis of Pakistan. I mean, we analyze Pakistan through the prism of identity. We look at it from the perspective of how it looks at India, geopolitics, but your weep analysis is something that comes across very, very significantly. So could you give us a gist of what your weep analysis is and the role that it is likely to play?
See, when I started writing the book, I did the traditional sort of, not chronological, but thematic. But then I realized when I started reading more and getting into the depth of it, that Pakistan's problems are so deep-rooted. And it is not only terrorism sort of diverts the attention. Islamization, fundamental, they all are huge issues. But you know, beneath that are these much larger issues. You can tackle terrorism, you can weaponize the jihadis, difficult as it is. But what do you do with something like water? You know, when you're running out of water, what do you do with that? Unless you make massive investments over a period of time. So that's when I went into this WEAP analysis, which is an acronym for water, education, economy, and population. So I looked at these 4 core areas which are critical to the well-being of any country. You know, it's just not just Pakistan. So once you study these 4 core areas and see where the vulnerabilities, where the gaps, where the problem areas is, in Pakistan's case, it has a problem in all the 4 areas. And all these areas have come together in time and space in the next decade or so. You will find water, for example. Pakistan is, in a nutshell, running out of water. The availability, per capita availability of water is already down to less than 1,000 cubic meters per capita per annum from about 5,600 in 1951. It's going to become absolute water scarce, that is less than 500 cubic meters per capita per annum in about 7 years' time by 2025 by Pakistan's own agencies. And this is happening because of A, inefficient agriculture. They've not been able to build enough storage capacity to store the waters of the Indus, Jhelum and Chenab during the surplus months to be used during the lean months. Inefficient agriculture, growing population, the groundwater is also coming down. So Pakistan actually has to make massive investment just in its water infrastructure. And then you add education. 50% of Pakistan's children don't go to primary schools. Those that do, there are massive dropout rates between primary and middle and between middle and senior. As a result, in Pakistan's labor force of about 60 million, there are only about 3.5% who are graduates. In an increasing technological advanced world, what are you going to do with just 3.5% of the labor force being graduates? And this is not something that can be rectified tomorrow. You have to invest in education today and the result will be known 20 years down the road. Likewise with the economy, massive structural problems. The GDP, the investment to GDP ratio, the savings to GDP ratio is among the lowest in the world. So you can't have manufacturing, you can't build jobs when the economy is in such a state. It's an economy which is driven by foreign doles. The Americans have bailed them out twice in the last 70 years. The Chinese are bailing them out today. But none of that money is going to create assets, manufacturing, which will produce jobs, which in turn will boost the economy. Likewise with population. Huge population is going at 2.4%. The highest probably anywhere in the world, certainly in South Asia. And you don't have the wherewithal to look after that population. So, all this, the VEEP analysis gives you a very frightening picture of Pakistan. So people keep saying, do you think Pakistan is going to fail? It's not a question of failing. No state fails. Somalia hasn't failed. Ethiopia hasn't failed. No state fails. But what is the quality of life that you're giving your people? Even the army will find this very difficult to protect Pakistan from the backlash of an uneducated or illiterate population that does not have jobs, which is running out of water. So it's a huge, that's why the VEEP factor, which I thought was I could contribute to the understanding of Pakistan.
So no wonder your book has got very good reviews in Pakistan.
Yes.
Because I think you must be one of the first Indian scholars who have looked at Pakistan away from the normal prism. Otherwise, Pakistan used to be characterized more in terms of.
And it's a factual analysis, heavily referenced. So nobody can say this is my opinion or a biased opinion. It's heavily referenced.
Otherwise, Pakistan would always be characterized using 3 A's as parameters: Allah, America, and Army. So thanks to you, now we are also going to modify our syllabus. We have a paper on Pakistan, where your book and your categorization on VEEP would be welcome. Mr. Devasher, you have been into the internal dynamics of policy approaches to Pakistan, and when we talk about the larger foreign policy apparatuses, the classic dilemma has been that, well, whom do you talk to in Pakistan? There are so many power centers in Pakistan. And in fact, that was the question we also put to Ambassador Raghavan when he come, and his reply to it was that you have to deal with whoever is there in power in Pakistan. Now, while I would certainly want to hear from you, could you also throw some light on what it was for you as an officer to deal with Pakistan in terms of your own professional commitments? I mean, did you also come across instances where you had to interact with Pakistani people at large? So in that sense, my question has these two dimensions. When you deal with Pakistan, one is the state-to-state level interaction. You deal with the powers that be. And when you deal with people in Pakistan, do you think that the solution lies somewhere down the line in getting a kind of a convergence between the two? Or we have to deal with these two parallel tracks?
The solution, if there is a solution, will only come under the change in Pakistani mindset. When the kind of indoctrination and poison that is instilled, earlier in my talk, I talked about the mindset of the Pakistan army. These various documents and books that they are trained upon to look upon India as a hostile, likewise with the school children. Unless you change that mindset, you're not going to be able to make any impact in Pakistan. And yes, it is the army that calls the India policy, even with Imran Khan. Even though they say that the army and the civil governments are on the same page. In fact, the foreign minister said, not only are we on the same page, we're reading from the same book. But you saw the result of what happened over there. So the army always opportunistically sits at the background, let the civil government do the nitty-gritty of the domestic issues. But when it comes to foreign policy, it's the army that calls the shot. And the army will not talk to you directly, because you take the Pakistan army chief, he has no counterpart in India. Because not only does he head the army and head the military policy, he's also a political head, he's the institutional head, he runs a huge business empire. You will require about 4 or 5 different officials on the Indian side to be able to just talk to the army chief. So it's a difficult situation. But yes, you have to deal with, if that is the elected prime minister and you have a foreign minister, ultimately whenever you do deal with them, you'll have to deal with these facades, the makhota as it were. But you know that behind that, it is the army that is calling the shots. And again, you mentioned civil society and
I meant more of a personal anecdotes. I mean,
yeah.
had you
so,
had some
at the
personal...
at the people-to-people level, you have a lot of people going across from India when they used to go for a cricket match, and they all came back with this huge, very positive impression about Pakistan. But they just go for 2 or 3 days. They don't stay there. If you stay there long enough, then you know exactly what the mindset of where the people are coming from. This is especially so in Punjab. Less so among the Pathans, Sindhis or the Baloch. They view you as a natural friend and the natural ally, because for them the immediate threat is the Punjabi colonizer, or the Punjabi is the one who's exploiting them. But it's the indoctrination in Punjab and also the hangover of partition which still exists. I'll tell you one thing, area which you may consider for your college for studying, the impact of refugee properties that were left behind in Punjab. Ayub Khan found that only 7% of the claims were genuine. So the properties were actually usurped by either people who were already there, who knew what the properties were, or people who came from India. And for them, the biggest fear is that if you have good relations with India at some time, your properties, what will happen to the properties? So that is a vested interest in ensuring that relationships don't improve. It's a very important fact which people tend to miss out, the refugee properties that were taken over. Only 7% of the claims are genuine.
Another question that often comes to mind, and in that sense it has to do with the shift of government in India last 4 years and the kind of tactics we adopted. At one point it did appear that we are going to play a very proactive role insofar as Balochistan issue was concerned. Of course we had a history of support to them, but then over the years not much movement appears to have been on that count. So on that sense, to what extent we can be proactive in terms of raising these issues within Pakistan?
I'm not sure when we were supporting the Baloch, which you just mentioned. I'm not.
No, in terms of the Prime Minister raising it at the level of...
Okay. In case of Balochistan, I have studied it in some amount of detail academically. Again, the problem in India, I think in the academic world, is how little we actually know about Balochistan. And people say ki we should be doing. So I asked them, do you know the difference between Balochi and Brahvi? Do you know where Balochi is spoken, where Brahvi is spoken? What is the difference? What are the districts in Balochistan? So our understanding of before we jump into something, we need to have a far greater clarity and understanding of what is it that you want to do in not only Balochistan, anywhere else. We first study the subject, understand the issues that are there, and then see what options or what potential that we have. I don't think so we've reached that stage yet where we know the subject, where we know Balochistan. Likewise, even Gilgit-Baltistan and so-called Azad Kashmir, which we claim to be part of us. You ask your students or ask anywhere else, what languages are spoken in Gilgit-Baltistan? Where is Sheena spoken? What is Brushaski? People will not be able to tell you this, but yet we say ki we
should.
So, first thing I think for all of us to realize.
That came at the topmost level, so that's why it raised a certain expectation.
Yes, but the people who then, the academic world, the journalists and all that, should then be educating the people. You can start a debate on this. That was the intention, that a lead has been given. You start a debate, educate people. Let people have a more informed discussion of where the problems are, what is the issues involved over there. Why are, if the Shia population in Gilgit-Baltistan, what is the relationship with the Sunni? Why is this Skardu close to Kargil? You know, so many issues are there. So the lead was given. We have to follow up.
When we look at Pakistan, of course, we can also not ignore the larger geopolitical questions. And as students of India's foreign policy, maritime security, China invariably comes in as far as analyzing Pakistan is concerned. So how do you look at China-Pakistan equation unfolding in the times to come? And what should be India's policy response? On one hand, we have to engage with China, but at the same time, how do we react to that relationship that is emerging?
That's a very important question. You see, since the 60s onwards, the China-Pakistan relationship was political and military, nuclear. For the last 3 or 4 years, an economic content has been given to the relationship because of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is the flagship project of the Belt and Road Initiative of President Xi Jinping. So this has given them a lot of teeth and depth to the relationship, which was not there all this while. But you know, then economics is something where bottom lines make a difference. And I find that for the last 3 years, when Pakistan initially thought that the keys of heaven have fallen in their laps because of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, they're going to become a middle-income economy very soon, is now turning skeptical. People are becoming very cynical in Pakistan because they realize that this was not a free lunch. They have to start repaying Chinese loans, about $3 to $3.5 billion a year from 2019 onwards. Pakistan is not in the position to repay $50 million. How will it repay $3.5 billion? So there is the danger that China will, in lieu of the loan, will start acquiring territory like Gwadar, for example, or built a huge chunk of territory around Gwadar, land in Punjab to grow crops meant for the Chinese market. So Pakistan is going to find it increasingly difficult when it starts dealing. So that all-weather, sweeter than honey, iron brother relationship, sort of cracks are going to come up in that relationship. But on the military, political and nuclear side, it's a very strong relationship. And I think China is keen to invest a lot more in Pakistan in terms of capital, political capital, because it is a low-cost option for China to keep India under check. This is a very contradictory relationship with China that we have. We have a huge trade, $50 billion, I don't know, it's probably even more. Yet we have a boundary, serious boundary issue which China is not interested in resolving. And it does not want India to be a competitor to it in Asia. So it finds Pakistan very convenient. So it is a relationship which we need to study and examine, look very, very carefully. For example, if there's a Doklam 2.0, that's what people keep thinking about. Now, what if Pakistan also starts creating trouble in Kashmir or other parts? You already have a tense situation with China. How will that play out? So it's a very important relationship for us. We need to look at it very closely and keep ourselves abreast of the developments, both tensions and the positive side. It's not all hunky-dory. The Uyghurs is another problem in China. Recent reports are that 1 million Uyghurs are being re-educated from Islam. Pakistan considers itself to be the forefront of all Islamic issues. You know, so how will the jihadi parties react to this, the Chinese coming down on the Muslims? So a lot of straws in the wind. We should watch it very carefully.
Just to quote the latest that has happened on the bilateral front, and it is connected to one of your recent writings in the press, that you're not too optimistic about the SARC process. I mean, you're not alone in that. Many of us also have given up on SARC, and we used to call ourselves sarcastics at times. There was a possibility of some kind of a meeting on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. Of course, it was quite clear that we are not going to meet there officially. But yesterday, even at the SARC forum, apparently there was no meeting of minds, and a lot followed after that. Would you not say that SARC at one point of time did provide a forum where, even if the bilateral thing was not going on between India and Pakistan, an opportunity was there for the two leaders to meet up and perhaps release the steam? By totally giving up on not moving ahead with the SARC process, are we not giving up that option as well?
You see, the fundamental point you're making is that you need a platform where leaders can meet. I don't believe SARC is that forum. SARC has run its steam. You know, it's run out of steam. It's just now degenerating into a slanging match. But there are other forums. You know, BRICS is one, SCO is another. So the other forums, the UN is another one, where if the leadership feels that they need to talk, like in the Paris Climate Change Summit, you would have found Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif were in a huddle, and things flowed from there. So, yes, you definitely need a platform, but I don't think SAARC is that particular platform.
And finally, I mean, your book begins with the poetry of Faiz and others. So is that out of a personal interest in poetry? And then would you like to conclude with some of your favorite writings?
You know, those two couplets that I've mentioned in the book, one by Faiz Ahmed Faiz and another by Habib Jalib, sort of sums up Pakistan's dilemma. You know, Faiz says, "Ye wo seher nahi jiska tha intezar," that this is not the dawn that we waited for. And Habib Jalib's lament, Pakistan Army has done to Pakistan, कि मोहब्बत गोलियों से बो रहे हो, वतन का चेहरा खून से धो रहे हो, गुमान तुमको कि रास्ता कट रहा है, यकीन मुझे कि मंजिल खो रहे हो. That is, you know, by this kind of an attitude, you've lost the way. And this is exactly what has happened to Pakistan. It was an incomplete dawn, ye seher nahi jiska tha wo intezar, and what the army and the leadership has done to Pakistan. So it encompasses these two couplets I found remarkable, you know, and I use them from my perspective. And yes, I am fond of poetry, I'm fond of poetry.
Wonderful. I think that was a very good note to begin your book and also to end the interview. I do hope that you continue to maintain your interest in Pakistan. Now you already constitute an important part in the Pakistan curriculum, at least at Goa University, because WEAP analysis is now included as part of Goa University curriculum. Thank you very much, Mr. Devasher.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.